Well, so good morning. I think you can see my slide. So last day we started with surface wave and we discussed about excitation of surface wave and how it travels through a dielectric slab. And in the second phase, a dielectric slab when it is grounded. So one side is supported by metal. And also we concluded that for some of the guiding structures, some of the surface wave modes are important. For example, for microstrip line, TM not mode, that creates the problem. And I think all of you have gone through it and understood why it creates problem for microstrip line. Similarly, if we have a different guiding structure like CPW or coplanar strip line, which is basically a planar form of two-wire transmission line. So then I suggest that you find out which surface wave modes create problem for them. So in fact, for any guiding structure, if we know the electric and magnetic field distributions, then we have to find out that which surface wave mode has electric and magnetic field in the same direction. Because if they become perpendicular to each other, we call them orthogonal mode, and they can't excite one another. So we don't have any effect due to the other mode. So they should have some component in the same direction. Next topic was uh, sources of loss, and we started with dielectric loss, then ohmic loss, and the radiation and surface wave loss. Today we'll discuss a little bit on it. Last we could not complete it. So for the conductor loss, sorry, for the conductor loss part, then what we concluded that it is basically Joule heating, nothing else. But for the closed form expression, in most of the cases, they consider a smooth surface, but practically it is not. If you look at the metal surface, it looks something like this. And if the surface roughness is comparable to the skin depth value or more than it, then actually conductor loss increases than what we calculated. Here is some examples. So it can be in fact 2 to 3 times compared to smooth surface. And then what about the dielectric loss? So it comes because of the imaginary part of permittivity, and the physics behind is a dielectric relaxation or polarization phenomena that you know. So now we concentrate on the third topic, the loss due to radiation and surface wave. Now, radiation comes mostly from unwanted modes. So, for example, in a microstrip line, the desired mode is TEM mode, and we try to use only over a single mode excitation. Otherwise, we face problem, and we discussed it that different modes have different phase velocities. Then, when we go for component design, it's really difficult to design the component with respect to different modes. So we always consider only one mode, and with respect to that, we design the component. So the component can be anything, active based or passive component. Anyway, so for a straight microstrip line as such, we don't expect radiation loss. It's very negligibly small. But the moment we introduce any perturbation, particularly discontinuities. So what is discontinuities? If we use some impedance tape, let's say, one part is thin, another is wide, and the junction, that is the discontinuity. Then if we use some metal via for ground connection, if we use some open stub, if we introduce some junction like a cross junction or T junction, if we let's say for power divider, so one line is coming that is connected to input RF source, and the output side it can be two or more than 2 lines. So we have a junction there. So these are in general known as discontinuities, and just at the discontinuities, it may not be TEM mode. Other than TEM mode, we have different higher order modes, and some of them Johansson mode. If you go through Colloid simulation, you can actually find out how the electric and magnetic field distribution it looks at these discontinuities. Well, so mostly radiation comes from this discontinuity. In some cases, actually, we can utilize this property, that radiation coming from discontinuity, to design antenna. So we have a category of antenna, we call it leaky wave antenna, where we don't use any resonant structure. So one popular example, let's say you have a long microstrip line and you are connecting open stop to it. Many of them periodic open stops. Now from a single open stop, the radiation, whatever coming out, it's very small. But once we introduce many of them, let's say 50 or more than that, then we have appreciable radiation, and we can use this structure as an antenna. Well, so okay, so can you see my slide? Because I just saw some internet issue. One message came. Hello. One of
yes,
you.
sir.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Well, so these unwanted modes, it creates a problem. Well, so here is one example. A CPW line. You can understand it is a cross-sectional view, and in the middle we have the signal line, left and right we use as the ground. Now if we use left and right as the ground, they should be at same potential over a cross-sectional plane, right? But if I look at the electric field distribution, left side, you see the electric field, it is generating from the middle line and coming to left ground, right side, right ground. So it seems that left and right ground, they are at same potential. Now in this case, if we consider an imaginary plane at the plane of symmetry, then what should be the condition of the plane? Is it PMC or PEC? Let me go back. If you recall a coupled microstrip line scenario and its field distribution. So here, if I consider an imaginary plane placed in the middle, which is basically the plane of symmetry. Now, with respect to that plane, left side and right side, the electric field in the same direction. So sometimes it's really difficult to understand that do we have an electric field component from left guiding structure to right guiding structure. So it is better to find out that the electric field on both sides, they are in same direction or in opposite direction. So you take this example. So for the even mode, if I consider a central plane at the plane of symmetry, here you can see this straight line, and with respect to this plane of symmetry, left side, right side, electric field in the same direction. But now if I consider the same thing here for the odd mode, electric field is they are in opposite direction. Sometimes it is difficult, I said, that to understand that any field component is coming from left to right or not. So better you consider this phenomena. So they are in the same direction or opposite direction with respect to plane of symmetry. So if I use that concept here for CPW line, so this is even mode. So here I can put the plane of symmetry, right? So this is the plane of symmetry. Well, I can't align it properly. In the middle, exactly. and the electric field, they are in same direction, so this will be the even mode. And if I now put it here, they are in opposite direction, so we have the odd mode. Now odd mode is the undesired mode. Usually it radiates. And why this problem we have, if you look here carefully, you see from the rightmost ground, electric field is starting, then ending here on the signal line, and from signal line to again left side ground. So in other word, we can say that these two extreme grounds, they are not at the same potential. So by looking at the electric field direction, then right side it is at higher potential compared to signal line, and signal line is at higher potential compared to the left ground. Of course, after 180 degree of length, if you go in forward direction or backward direction, the direction of electric field will change, that you know. So now how to avoid this odd mode? Well, so one popular structure, we use wire bridge. What is that? So basically one metal wire bond, we connect it from left to right. I think you can see this line just now I drew. Okay, let me just increase it a little and represent it by a different color. So this is called wire bond. Well, so what is the advantage? If the wire bond length is much less than operating wavelength, so it is basically shorting left and right ground plane, and it should be little up so that it does not disturb the electric field distribution in slot. So that's why we have to use a metal wire like this. We can't directly connect them. So then this wire bond will force these two grounds to stay at the same potential, and it will stop excitation of odd mode. Now, how the odd mode is excited? Let's say I'm launching the wave in even mode. So odd mode, it is completely different. Usually it does not excite. But the moment I will introduce some discontinuity, from the discontinuity odd mode can be generated. In the microwave system, there are different components, so we can't avoid discontinuity. So this is a standard practice that if you use CPW line, you use air bridge, particularly at the discontinuities. Okay, and we use them, many of them, not just one. It looks like a periodic structure in the propagation direction. And if you are not sure about excitation of odd mode, you use actually multiple of them, and the separation between two successive wire bond, it is typically less than lambda g by 8, or of the order of lambda g by 8. Well, now surface wave mode. Surface wave mode we discussed in details. One straightforward way to keep surface wave mode excitation minimum is that you would take the thickness of substrate as small as possible, but there are other limitations. If it is too thin, then the electric field intensity inside the substrate will increase. Tangential magnetic field to metal, that will also increase. You consider that thumb rule, what we discussed, that cross-sectional area decreasing. Then if I keep on reducing the substrate thickness for microstrip line like structure, then actually you are increasing dielectric loss and conductor loss. So there should be some optimum substrate thickness. Well, so typically the thumb rule we use that h by lambda naught should be much less than 1. And if you have the value of lambda g, then lambda g depends on both, on the operating frequency as well as epsilon r of the material. So lambda g, better to take lambda g actually, since it incorporates these two important parameters, frequency and epsilon r. And h by lambda g, if it is less than, let's say, 1 0.01 or 1 by 100, then we don't have to consider the surface wave at all. But if it is more than that, then you better simulate the structure and check for surface wave. So you have already learned how to find out different components of loss using a full wave simulator. So next part, then in general, attenuation, if we consider, so for the attenuation constant alpha, then we should have three components. One component is coming due to conductor loss, represented by alpha C. Second component due to dielectric loss, alpha D. And the third one is due to radiation and surface wave loss, usually represented by alpha R. Now, if I have a rectangular waveguide, it's a closed structure, so alpha R should be 0. We have only alpha C and alpha D. Further, if the inside part of waveguide is vacuum or dry air, then we can neglect alpha D. So the only component we are left with, that is alpha C. Also, we have some derivation in TM Pojar's book. You can go through that. And whenever we have loss, then propagation constant become complex, and we can't neglect alpha part. So mathematically, it is shown that if loss is small, beta usually remains unaffected. So this is the closed form expression for dielectric loss for TE and TM modes. Alpha D equal to K square tan delta by twice beta meter per meter. So in all the expressions, we have the unit as Nipper per meter. If you now want to convert it to dB scale, decibel scale, so you have to multiply by 8.686 to get the value in dB. Well, so dielectric loss, this part we discussed in details, epsilon double dash, epsilon dash, then the variation with frequency and other things. So let us take a few questions. So till this point, do you have any question? You can ask me. You can switch on your microphone and ask the question.
Sir, could you explain what exactly a surface wave is?
Oh, after going for so long, anyway. Any other question related to surface wave? So please switch on your microphone and tell me. Any more question on surface wave? Any more question on surface wave?
Sir, I had a question on a surface wave. Sir, I wanted to ask if the, sir, when we are designing a microstrip line, if the size of the wave ports or the radiation box affect the surface wave and radiation loss?
No, wave port usually not. Wave port, it should be confined in your structure, but the radiation box, you see, when the structure is defined, its physical parameters as well as electrical parameters. Operating frequency is defined, then in the measurement, we have only one value of surface wave, power loss due to surface wave, only one value. So now in simulation, we are estimating the value. It should also give me that value as close as possible. Otherwise, why I am going to use full wave simulator? So if you don't use full wave simulator properly, then it will give you error, sometimes completely wrong results. And there you have to learn where exactly I should place the radiation box. It plays an important role. Placement of radiation boundary or absorbing boundary. Okay, so that if you change, you can even do some experiment in simulation. You change the separation between your radiation boundary and your structure, and you will see if it is not within the suggested value, then it will change dramatically, and that is not expected. So whenever you are using any full wave simulator, actually you have to be very careful about that.
Okay, sir.
Now, what is surface wave? You can even test it in full wave simulator. I'm coming to that point. Right now I don't have any picture. So what is surface wave? Basically, as shown here in this structure, this is for a dielectric slab scenario. So let's say you have a discontinuity, a microstrip or a step, impedance step. So from that, some propagating wave is generated. And now the mode, it is no more TEM. Okay, it is a different mode, TE or TM mode. And the wave is not confined to microstrip line anymore. Then what happens to it? It will start spreading everywhere inside the dielectric. So it can't penetrate, it can't come out in air as radiation directly, but it will travel through the dielectric medium. So if I can draw it here. If I have, let's say, substrate, I'm looking top view, and somehow a surface wave is created here from some discontinuity. Now, what will happen to it? Then it will travel in all the direction. From here, this side, then this side, then this side, everywhere. We don't have any control over it as such. This side, everywhere. Okay, so it creates the problem. So it looks like a propagating wave over which we don't have any control. In fact, in some of the applications, surface wave is utilized for antenna design or for some other configuration, passive configuration. In general, we don't want them. Now, when it reach this boundary here, air dielectric boundary, so at that point, a part will be radiated in air. So it comes out as undesired radiation, again, over which I don't have any control. For antenna application, we want radiation in the desired direction only, not that everywhere. Well, so that's why even the antenna designer also try to avoid this surface wave radiation. Okay. So surface wave, basically it is a propagating wave which propagates along the surface of the given dielectric. Does it explain your query?
Yes, sir.
Well, now we'll move to the last part of printed circuit board based circuit. So this is just a brief discussion how we fabricate the structure in printed circuit board technology, why it is so popular. So first of all, why popular? That we can design, we can fabricate it very easily by using a chip method. So what are the typical methods? Chemical etching and mechanical etching. So when we have the PCB structure, so what we do or what we have in from market, we buy a substrate covered with copper on both sides. Now, when I'm designing a microstrip line based circuit or any other guiding structure based components or circuit, then we want metal in some part and other parts we want to take out the metal. That's all. Usually the dielectric part remains unaffected. Now the width, whatever you want, that should be accurately realized. So let's say for a 50 ohm microstrip line for the given substrate, you calculated the width required is 1.8 millimeter. Now, when you are taking out the metal from the undesired part, if the width become let's say 1.9 or 1.5, then what will happen? The characteristics impedance in your design you consider 50 ohm, but it would become something different, and the result will not match. So we call it fabrication tolerance. This fabrication tolerance should be as small as possible. Then what are the techniques typically popular to take out this metal from undesired parts? The first thing is chemical etching. Chemical etching, I think some of you already did it. Who has hobby? It is we have actually different forms of chemical etching techniques. Some of them are very cheap. In fact, you can do it in your home, and even computerized chemical etching technique is available. So the whole setup can cost a few crores. And if we can do it correctly, we can achieve an accuracy of the order of maximum, let's say, fabrication tolerance of the order of plus minus 25 micron. That is quite good value. At least for microwave frequency range till 30 gigahertz, we will not face any problem as such. And what are the steps typically we use for chemical etching? If you did it in your home, same step here also. Simply laser printer. We have this facility in our CB lab. So we take a transparent sheet and print your circuit using 1:1 scale on that transparent sheet. And by using any laser printer, you can do it. Standard laser printer, which we use with the computer. Well, now there are again two approaches. One is negative, another one is positive. It depends on what type of chemicals you are using. For the negative, actually the black part, it is just like your photography. Actually, it is just the opposite thing will come in the mask. So where you don't want metal, that part is black in negative. And in positive, just the opposite. So it looks like the black part looks like your circuit. Now, second step, we first use some sort of chemical which is sensitive to ultraviolet ray. So it will, if I use ultraviolet ray on the chemical, it will change its properties. So then we have to do it in dark room. We put that mask on that chemical coated substrate, and then you put it in some UV box. So where you have UV light source, typically for us it is 10 to 15 seconds. For some machine it can go up to 30 or 1 minute, 30 seconds to 1 minute. Well, so one exposure is done, then put it in a dye bath. So basically that will change the color of the desired part, either for the basically in the part which you use as white, that part is exposed, so that part will use the dye. Now in the next step, we put it in some etchant material, and that will take out the metal. And how long it will keep inside that, that is also critical. If it is for too long, then it will go below the dry part and take out metal. Well, so in this step, sometimes that's why it is completely computerized. So please keep your microphone muted. Anyway, So that is the chemical etching procedure. Left side in this figure, I'm showing that when it is immersed in the dye. The second one is milling machine by using milling. So it is a computer controlled machine where we use different drill bits. We have actually different types of bits, and this bit position, its rotation, its depth, everything is controlled by a computer. And how it takes out the metal, we have a spin here. It's very high spin rate, and then it uses milling basically. So you rub the metal part and take it out. It's called milling. Well, so we have two machines in our department. One from LPK, it's a German company, and another one from MITS. So MITS one is actually a high precision one, and it can provide us a precision of plus minus 25 micron. So we have to just load it, that design in the computer, and then
Sir, you have been muted.
okay. So since here you can control the depth, if you require, then we can also do this for the substrate. Let's just, for some part we want to take out the substrate, and if you want to drill some vias, that also can be done by using this machine. Next, how we solder different components. So first of all, we use SMD components. We call it surface mountable device. And we initially discussed their dimension should be small enough so that it won't give as such parasitic effect or phase change. So you can't use the soldering method whatever you use at low frequency. Okay, so it is little different. We can still use soldering station, but it should be very much temperature control. So if you look at the SMT components, first of all, they are very small in size. They can be as small as 0.25 millimeter to 0.51 millimeter dimension by 1 millimeter dimension, like that. Now, then you have to use a microscope for soldering. You should have good control on your hand. And the second thing, it comes from temperature requirements and electrostatic requirements. So this ESD protection, I think already you learned in other classes. For any SMT component, since its power handling capability is small, and some of the times we also use active components. Now, if you touch by using your hand, if you know that if we rub our hand, then we are generating electrostatic potential charges, positive and negative charges, and the potential difference sometimes can go up more than 1000 volt. Now, if I apply that across a SMT component, basically when you are touching it, then energy is not that great. We have a momentary pulse passing through it. It's a very short pulse, but current can be very high, a few hundred milliampere to a few ampere even. So that will destroy SMT components for most of the components. So we need some sort of ESD protection. Now, when you buy the component from manufacturer, there are different ESD level. They will actually give a list that how much voltage it can take. So the lowest is typically 30 to 50 volt. For 30 to 50 volt, if the ESD value is given, then actually you have to be very careful about it. You can't touch it even by using any metal. Okay, so this is one point. It's coming from ESD. And to protect it, what are the steps we take? First of all, this soldering station or other things, whatever we are using, we have to put it on some electrostatic mat. This in our lab, we have this electrostatic mat. and this is a band. We use it like our watch. Basically, if we have any charge, then it goes to ground directly. So even after all this protection, actually the components which has level 0 ESD value, if you touch, it will damage it, even after taking this protection. So usually we don't touch it using metal or plastic. We use wooden tools or something else. And how the flow rate looks like for ESD. So if we carry any charge, that should be grounded through this mat. That will decrease the potential.